The first thing I noticed when I came home from the hospital was the new lock. It was bright silver, modern, expensive, and completely unfamiliar. I stood in the hallway outside apartment 4B with one hand on my cane and the other holding the plastic hospital bag containing the clothes I had left with 4 days earlier. I tried my key, nothing. I tried again, still nothing. For 37 years, the key in my hand had opened that door. Now it didn't. I looked at the lock, then at the apartment number 4B. My apartment, my kitchen was behind that door. My books were behind that door. My late wife's photographs were behind that door. My father's desk was behind that door. And apparently, my daughter-in-law had decided none of that mattered anymore. I knocked once, twice, then I heard footsteps. The door opened 3 inches. My daughter-in-law, Karen, looked at me. She didn't appear surprised. "You're back." I stared at her. Yes, she kept one hand on the door. Good. I looked at the lock. "What happened?" "We changed it." "I can see that. You needed to understand that things can't continue like this." I was still wearing the gray sweater the hospital had given me when my shirt became too uncomfortable. I looked exhausted. I felt exhausted. But I wasn't confused. "What exactly can't continue?" Karen sighed. "Your living situation." "My living situation? You were in the hospital for 4 days, Richard." "I know. I was there. You can't keep pretending you can live independently." I looked at her. "I'm standing here, aren't I? That's not the point." "Then what is?" She opened the door slightly wider. I could see my own hallway inside, my umbrella stand, my framed photograph of Linda. Everything was exactly where I remembered it. Except the lock. Karen folded her arms. "Daniel and I have decided it's time for you to move." I stared at her. "Daniel decided?" "Yes." "Where is he?" "At work." "Did he know you were changing my locks?" "Yes." That hurt. More than I expected. My son knew. He had allowed it. Maybe he had even asked her to do it. I reached for the handle. Karen stopped me. "You can't come in." I looked at her. "Karen, this is my home." "No." She shook her head. "It isn't anymore." I stared at her. Then she said the sentence that finally made me understand how far this had gone. "We've already started making plans for this apartment." I looked past her. "What kind of plans?" She hesitated, then, "We're moving in." For a moment, I thought she was joking. My daughter-in-law, moving into my apartment after changing my locks, while I was in the hospital. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "Where do you think I am supposed to live?" She shrugged. "Somewhere smaller." I looked down at my hospital bag, then back at her. "Open the door." "No, Karen, no." Her voice became firmer. "You need to accept that things are different now." I nodded slowly. "You're right." A small smile appeared on her face. She thought I had surrendered. She didn't know what I had been carrying in my coat pocket since the day I left the hospital. Not a weapon, not a threat, a folded document. And if Karen had remembered who actually owned this building, she would never have changed that lock. My name is Richard Bennett. I was 72 when my daughter-in-law locked me out of my own home. What Karen didn't know was that I wasn't simply the owner of apartment 4B. I owned the entire building. All 6 floors. 42 apartments. The retail spaces on the ground floor, the parking lot behind the building, and the company that managed all of it. I had bought the property 31 years earlier, when almost nobody wanted it. The building was old. The plumbing was terrible. Half the tenants were behind on rent. The elevators broke constantly. The roof leaked. My wife, Linda, thought I was insane. "You're buying a headache," she told me. I laughed. "It's a building. It is a giant headache." She was right. For the first 5 years, I worked almost every weekend. I learned every corner, every tenant, every broken pipe, every maintenance problem. Slowly, the building improved. The roof was replaced. The plumbing was modernized. The electrical systems were upgraded. The old apartments were renovated. Eventually, the building became profitable, very profitable. But I never became flashy. I kept my old car. I still lived in 4B. I preferred knowing my tenants over sitting in an office. Most people in the building thought I was simply the retired landlord who lived upstairs. They didn't know how large the property had become. They didn't know I had turned it into a company. And I never told my children the full details, not because I distrusted them, because I believed their lives should be built around their work, not my assets. My son Daniel disagreed. After Linda died, he became more interested in the building. He started asking questions. How much is it worth? How much rental income does it generate? Who's managing it? What happens to it when you're gone? I always gave the same answer. It's taken care of. He didn't like that. Neither did Karen. She wanted certainty. She wanted to know what their future looked like. Eventually, they began talking about the building as if it were already part of their inheritance. I noticed. I just didn't confront it. Then came my heart problem. A minor one, according to the doctors. A major one, according to Karen. I had chest pain one evening. Daniel called an ambulance. The doctors kept me in the hospital for observation. 4 days. That's all. 4 days. But while I was lying in that hospital bed, something changed. Daniel visited once. Karen came twice. And during her second visit, she said, "You really shouldn't go back to that apartment." I looked at her. Why? It's too much. I've lived there for 37 years. You need care. I can hire someone. She frowned. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? She lowered her voice. I think the family needs to rethink the building. There it was. Not my health, the building. I said nothing. She smiled. Let's talk when you're better. I knew then that the hospital wasn't the real problem. My health had simply given them an opportunity to take control. What they didn't know was that the hospital had given me something too. Time to call my attorney. Time to review my estate documents. Time to look at the company's ownership structure. And time to discover that Daniel had been asking my property manager questions he had no right to ask. Back in the hallway, Karen was still blocking my door. You need to go, she said. I looked at her. Where? Daniel arranged a temporary place. For me? Yes. What place? A furnished apartment across town. I almost laughed. You rented an apartment for me without asking. You need somewhere safe. I shook my head. I don't need a place someone else chose, she sighed. Please don't make this harder. I reached into my coat pocket. Her eyes followed my hand. I pulled out the folded document. She frowned. What is that? I unfolded it. It was a property certificate. Old official. I handed it to her. She glanced at the page, then looked confused. What am I supposed to be looking at? I pointed to the ownership section. My name. She looked again, then back at me. So I smiled. Read the property description. Her eyes moved down the page. The color slowly drained from her face. She read the address, then the building number, then the legal description. Her lips parted. This, yes. She looked at me. This is the whole building. Correct. You own the whole building? I do. She stared at me. Daniel never told me. I believe you. She looked frightened now, not because she understood the paperwork, because she was beginning to understand what it meant. I stepped closer. You changed the lock on an apartment you do not own. She said nothing, and you told the owner he couldn't come inside. Her face went pale, then she whispered, Richard? I folded the paper. I think we need to have a very different conversation. Before she could answer, I heard another door open down the hallway. Mr. Alvarez from 4A stepped out. He had lived in the building for 23 years. He looked at Karen, then at me. Richard? Yes, you're back. I am. He glanced at the new lock, then at Karen. What happened? Karen didn't answer. I smiled. Apparently, there has been a misunderstanding. Mr. Alvarez looked confused. I wasn't, because at that moment, I heard an elevator stop on our floor. The doors opened. My son Daniel stepped out. He saw me. He saw Karen. Then he saw the document in my hand. His face changed. He knew. But he didn't know that I had already made a decision the night before in my hospital bed, a decision that would determine who controlled this building from that day forward. And it had nothing to do with changing the locks. Daniel stepped out of the elevator. For several seconds, nobody spoke. He looked at me, then at Karen, then at the new lock. Finally, his eyes settled on the document in my hand. Dad, I held up one hand. Before you say anything, I want to hear the truth. Karen stepped toward him. Daniel, I can explain. He looked at her. No, that surprised me. He shook his head. Dad deserves an explanation. I watched him carefully. This was the first time in months he had spoken that way, not defending his wife, defending me. But I wasn't ready to trust the change. Who decided to change the locks? I asked. Daniel looked down. Karen. Did you know? He swallowed. Yes. I nodded. And you approved it? Yes. I looked at him. Why? He hesitated. Then he said, because I thought you were going to sell the building. I almost laughed. I never said that. I know. Then why? Because we thought you were getting sick. I looked at Karen. We? She remained silent. Daniel continued. She said you weren't going to be able to manage everything. And you believed her? Yes. Did you check? No. That answer hurt. Not because he had made a mistake, because he had trusted someone else more than he trusted his own father. I looked at the locked door. You planned to move into my apartment. Daniel closed his eyes. We thought you'd move into assisted living. I never agreed. I know. And what happens to apartment 4B after that? He didn't answer. Karen did. We would take care of it. I turned toward her. You mean you would live there? She looked away. That was answer enough. I took a breath. Let's go downstairs. Daniel looked surprised. Where? To the management office. Dow. He nodded. We took the stairs. Karen followed. Mr. Alvarez watched us go. As we passed the second floor, several doors opened slightly. People were listening. By the time we reached the ground floor, the building manager, Susan, was standing behind the desk. She looked at me. Richard, good morning. Then she looked at Daniel. Her expression became cautious. Did you know about the lock change? Susan shook her head. No. Did anyone authorize it? No. Good. I looked at Daniel. You've been asking Susan for financial information, haven't you? He didn't answer. I turned back to her. Did he request access to the property accounts? Yes. How much? She hesitated. Quite a lot. Daniel sighed. Dad. I held up my hand again. No. Let her finish. Susan looked uncomfortable. He asked for rental statements, maintenance budgets, tax records, and the current property valuation. I nodded. And did you give them to him? No. I told him only you could authorize that. I looked at my son. He was staring at the floor. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Were you planning to sell the building? Daniel finally looked at me. No. Then what were you planning? He hesitated. To transfer management. To yourself. Yes. Karen interrupted. Not transfer ownership. I turned toward her. What were you planning to do with management? She crossed her arms. Run it as a family business. I looked at Daniel. Did I agree to that? No. Then it wasn't a family business. Silence. I picked up the phone on Susan's desk. Call my attorney. My attorney, Andrew Lewis, arrived 40 minutes later. He entered the management office carrying a leather folder. He looked at Daniel and Karen, then at me. Are you ready? Yes. I sat down. Andrew placed the folder on the desk. Before we discuss the lock, there's something you both need to understand. Karen looked nervous. Daniel remained silent. Andrew opened the first document. Mr. Bennett established the property company 30 years ago. He slid the incorporation papers across the table. The shares are held entirely by him. Karen looked at Daniel. Andrew continued. Neither of you has ownership. I nodded. Then he opened another document. Neither of you has management authority. Karen frowned. But Daniel is his son. Andrew didn't even look up. That doesn't create legal authority. She became quiet. Then he placed another document on the table. This is the updated estate plan. Daniel looked at it. What is that? My will, I said. His face changed. Andrew continued. Mr. Bennett updated his estate plan while he was in the hospital. Daniel looked at me. You changed your will? Yes. Because of us? Because I finally understood that I had never made my wishes clear enough. Karen's face tightened. What does it say? I looked at Andrew. He nodded. You have the right to explain. I took a breath. The building will not pass directly to either of you. Daniel looked stunned. Then who gets it? The property will be placed into a family trust. Karen frowned. For what purpose? To provide housing support for elderly tenants and low-income families. She stared at me. You're giving it away? No. I shook my head. I'm protecting it. Daniel rubbed his forehead. But our family, I interrupted him. You keep saying family. I looked directly at him. Family does not mean automatic ownership. Nobody spoke. Then Karen asked, what happens to us? I answered, you keep the life you've built. She laughed bitterly. And the building? Remains under professional management. Daniel looked at me. Dad, that's worth millions. Yes. You're really giving that away? No. I looked at my son. I'm refusing to let it become the thing that destroys us. He went quiet. That was when I realized he finally understood. The apartment was never the real issue, control was. I expected the conversation to end there, it didn't. Susan received a call from the building accountant while we were still in the office. She looked at me. Richard, I think you need to hear this. What happened? There are 2 maintenance accounts. I frowned. There should only be one. I know. She opened the file. One is legitimate. She tapped another statement. This one was opened 3 months ago. I looked at Daniel. He became pale. What's the name on it? I asked. Susan, read the document. Bennett Property Management. That sounds normal. It is. Then what's wrong? She turned the paper toward me. The account isn't connected to the property company's tax number. I looked at Andrew. He leaned closer. Who's authorized? Susan looked at the signature line. Daniel Bennett. Silence filled the room. I turned to my son. What is this? He looked horrified. I didn't open that. Karen stepped backward. Daniel turned toward her. Karen. She said nothing. I looked at Andrew. Can we trace the account? Yes. He turned to Susan. Do you have transaction records? She nodded. 6 months. Print everything. Within an hour the answer appeared. The account had received several payments from contractors who worked on the building. Small amounts, $2,400, $3,100, $5,700. Together, almost $28,000. I stared at the numbers. What are those? Susan answered. Vaden rebates. I frowned. What does that mean? Andrew looked at the documents. It means someone was receiving side payments from contractors. I looked at Daniel. He shook his head. Dads, I swear, I didn't know. I believed him, at least partly, because the account had been opened through a company email address, not his personal email. Susan looked at Karen. Karen said nothing. I felt something inside me go cold. She had not simply changed the locks. She had started diverting money. And suddenly, I understood why she had been so determined to control the building. The apartment wasn't her goal. The building's income was. Andrew spent the rest of the day tracing the account. The details were ugly. Karen had established a separate management service. She had approached several contractors who worked on my properties. She told them she was going to become the new property manager. She offered them continued contracts in exchange for small consulting fees. None of the contractors wanted trouble. They assumed she had authority. She didn't. The payments went into the unauthorized account. Then they disappeared into another account. When Andrew traced the second account, he found transfers to a credit card. Karen's credit card. I looked at the records. Travel, furniture, private school fees, clothing, restaurants, thousands of dollars. Money taken from people who believed they were paying my property company. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger. Disappointment. I turned to my son. Did you know? He shook his head. No, you never. I trusted her. I nodded. So did I. Karen finally spoke. You're acting like I stole millions. I looked at her. I didn't say millions. She became quiet. You took money that wasn't yours. It wasn't a lot. I shook my head. That's not the point. She looked frustrated. You would have given us the building eventually. I stared at her. Eventually. Based on what? She looked away. We're your family. I laughed quietly. And that made you feel entitled to collect early. She didn't answer. Andrew gathered the papers. We're done here. He turned to Daniel. I strongly advise that your wife obtain independent legal counsel. Daniel looked at me. Dad, I was tired. Very tired. Take care of your family, Daniel. He looked surprised. What about you? I'll take care of myself. 2 days later, I walked through the building. I wanted to see it differently, not as an asset, as a home. I visited Mrs. Alvarez on the 5th floor. She was 84. She had lived there for 19 years. How are you? I asked. She smiled. I heard you were back. I am. She poured tea. Are you selling? I smiled. No, she relaxed. Good. I asked her why. She looked around the apartment. Because this is the first place I've felt safe since my husband died. That sentence stayed with me. I went downstairs. Then I visited Mr. Patel. He had lived there 12 years. His wife had medical bills. They were struggling. If the rent goes up, he said, we may have to leave. I sat beside him. We aren't raising it. He smiled. Thank you. Then I realized something. The building wasn't just property. It was 42 lives. People trusted me with their homes. I had nearly allowed my own family to turn that responsibility into a financial prize. That night, I changed my plans. The trust would not simply hold the building. It would protect the tenants. Rent increases would be limited. Senior residents would have additional protections. A portion of the annual profits would support building maintenance and emergency assistance. The remaining income would fund the care and housing program I had originally envisioned. When Andrew reviewed the plan, he smiled. This is different. It should be. You're building something beyond yourself. I looked at the building. That's what my wife would have wanted. Daniel came to see me the following Sunday, alone. He sat at my kitchen table. The first place we had ever talked about money as adults. I want to apologize. I nodded. You've said that. This time I mean it. I smiled. I believe you. He looked relieved. Then he said, I should have stopped, Karen. Yes. I should have trusted you. Yes. I thought I was protecting the family. I looked at him. You were protecting an expectation. He nodded. You're right. We sat quietly. Then he asked, are you cutting us out of everything? No. He looked surprised. You're not. No. I slid a document toward him. What is this? Your inheritance. He looked at it. It outlined a modest financial inheritance, enough to help him, not enough to become dependent. He stared at me. Why? Because I am your father. He looked up. But the building isn't yours? He nodded. I understand. Do you? Yes. He looked down. I don't want to become like her. I didn't answer. He continued. I've watched what money did to her. Then he looked at me, and I realized I was starting to think about you the same way. That hurt, but it was honest. Thank you for telling me. He nodded. I'm sorry. This time I reached across the table. Then change. Karen eventually moved out, not because I forced her to, because Daniel made a choice. He filed for separation. He told me he couldn't rebuild trust while pretending nothing had happened. The financial investigation continued. The contractors cooperated. Karen returned part of the money. The rest became part of a legal settlement. She was not destroyed, but she lost control of the things she had tried to claim. Daniel also changed. He stopped trying to become a property manager. He returned to his original career. He bought a small house. He started paying his own bills. And when he visited me, he stopped asking about the building. That was how I knew he had changed. One evening he asked, "How's Mrs. Alvarez?" I smiled. "She's doing well." "And Mr. Patel?" "Still complains about the parking." Daniel laughed. "Good." We sat on the porch. For the first time in years, my son was interested in people. Not assets, not property. People. I kept the new lock. That surprised everyone. After the legal matter was settled, my attorney asked, "Do you want us to replace it?" I thought about it. "No." "Why?" "Because I want to remember it." He looked puzzled. I explained. "That lock reminds me of what happens when family begins confusing love with ownership." I still have it, mounted in a small box in my office, not because I enjoy the memory, because I don't want to forget what it taught me. People can take things you own. They can misunderstand your intentions. They can even try to take control of your life, but they cannot decide what your legacy becomes. You can. 1 year later, we renamed the building. It had always been called Bennett Court. I changed it. Now the sign outside reads, "The Linda Bennett House." My wife would have hated the attention, but I wanted her name there, because she had been the person who understood something I sometimes forgot. A home matters because of the people inside it, not the number on a valuation report, not the monthly rent, not the inheritance. The people today. Several apartments are reserved for older residents who need stable rent. The building has a small emergency assistance fund. The common areas are better maintained than ever. And I still live in 4B, same kitchen, same bookshelves, same photograph of Linda. Only one thing has changed. I now know exactly what will happen after I'm gone. The building won't become a weapon in a family argument. It won't become a prize. It won't become a source of resentment. It will remain what I wanted it to be from the beginning, a place where people can live safely. Last month, Daniel came over. We were sitting in my living room when he asked, "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think Mom would have been disappointed in me?" I thought about Linda. I imagined what she would say. "No." Daniel looked surprised. "You don't?" "No, why?" "Because your mother didn't measure people by their worst mistake." He looked down. "But she would have expected you to learn." He nodded. "That sounds like her." "It is." He smiled. Then he asked, "What about me? What about you? Do you still trust me?" I thought carefully. "More than I did a year ago." He smiled. "That's honest." "I've learned to be honest." We laughed. Then he stood. "I should go. Come by next week." "I will." He reached the door, then turned around. "Dad?" "Yes?" "I won't ever change your locks again." I laughed. "Good." I went into the hospital believing I was there because of a health scare. I came home realizing that the real emergency was somewhere else. My family had begun treating my life as an asset. My son saw the building as an inheritance. My daughter-in-law saw it as a financial opportunity. And I had allowed both of them to believe that because I loved them, they were entitled to information, control, and eventually ownership. That was my mistake. Love does not require blindness. Family does not eliminate boundaries. And generosity does not create ownership rights. I learned that while standing outside my own apartment, holding a hospital bag, staring at a lock someone else had installed, I could have shouted. I could have humiliated Karen. I could have thrown her out that afternoon. Instead, I let the documents speak. I let the accounts speak. I let the law speak. And eventually, the truth became impossible to ignore. I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity. And once I had clarity, I could make a decision that protected everyone who mattered. My tenants, my future, my wife's memory, my son, and even the part of me that still believed family could be trusted. Today, the silver lock is still on apartment 4B. It works perfectly. I have the only key. Sometimes I stand in the hallway and look at it. I remember the day I came home from the hospital, the fear, the humiliation, the confusion. Then I remember what happened afterward. The documents, the hidden account, the truth, the trust, the rebuilding. My daughter-in-law changed the locks while I was at the hospital. She thought she was taking control of my apartment. She forgot one small detail. I owned the entire apartment building. But even that wasn't the most important thing she forgot. She forgot that ownership gives you legal control over property. It does not give someone the right to control the people who live there. And I learned that my greatest responsibility wasn't protecting a building worth millions. It was protecting what that building represented. Security, dignity, home. That's why I kept it. Not for my son, not for my daughter-in-law, not even for myself, for the people who trusted me enough to call it home. And maybe that's what a legacy really is. Not what your family gets when you die, what your choices give to others while you're still alive. My son once thought the building was his future. My daughter-in-law thought she could claim it while I was helpless. They were both wrong. The building was never the inheritance. The lesson was. And I hope my son carries that lesson for the rest of his life. Because one day, when I'm gone, the building will still stand. There will be tenants in the windows, lights in the hallways, children growing up in apartments I once renovated, older people drinking coffee beside windows that overlook the same street. And somewhere in that building, my wife's name will remain. That is the legacy I wanted. Not a property deed passed from one generation to another. A place that outlived us. A place that helped people. A place where nobody had to wonder whether they still had a home. And every time I unlock apartment 4B, I remember something simple. A door can be locked. A family can make threats. People can try to take control. But if you know what you own, what you believe, and what you stand for, no one else gets to decide where you belong. If this story made you think about family boundaries, property, inheritance, and the difference between love and entitlement, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the story, like the video, subscribe and turn on notifications for more emotional family stories about betrayal, consequences, unexpected justice, and second chances.